meeting. Today is Tuesday, May 28th, 2019, it's 7 o'clock.
I'll give it to Tom.
I'll call this meeting of the Stowe Board of Selectmen to order. You'll have to excuse us courtesy of Gwen Burke. We have certain dessert items, mostly congregated down that end of the table, I noticed, but we'll see if anything makes its way down here.
Anyone in attendance or any of my colleagues are welcome to have some. I got forks and napkins, plates.
And I'll begin, as we always do, with public input on anything that is not on the agenda. All right, seeing and hearing nothing. Chairman's comments. I do have a few things I want to comment on. First of all, many residents and all of us participated in the Stowe Memorial Day festivities yesterday, and I just want to thank Martha Monroe, Tom Zaborski, and Patty Bolton, the members of the Veterans Graves Committee. Really, as usual, a wonderful event. They made a few changes this year, which personally I thought really worked out very, very well. Changed the route a little bit, and had all the speaking down at one location. A beautiful day certainly helped. I just want to thank them for all the hard work that they put into it, and G.H. Gledhill for the cemetery that looked terrific. I want to thank the organizers of Springfest. Once again, we had a very successful Springfest event. Again, perfect weather didn't hurt. I want to thank Samantha Altieri, Sarah Salamone, Maura Hyland, and Sherry Jusami. They're the organizers of Springfield, and I have to note that there is one open spot on their committee. This is a very important function. You know, the Springfest is something that, I mean, Tom could tell you, it goes way, way back. It has come close to us not doing it once or twice. Recently, it's really been revitalized. The people who've taken it over have done a terrific job. It's great to see them pick up the ball and run with it. And if you're interested in being part of that team, now would be the time to speak out. Just let the Selectmen's office know. An email is fine. I do want to note that the Best Buddies ride from Boston to Hyannis is this Saturday, June 1st. I think it's varying distances. I think 20, 50, and 100 miles, and I have to note that Brian Burke and his family have committed to a 50-mile ride this year. And good luck with that, Mr. Burke.
The majority of the family have so committed.
The majority of the family, I'm sure his wife will be doing about 43. The kids will be doing another 5, and Brian might be doing like 2. So, but good luck with that, Brian.
I'll do what I can, Mr. Chair. I will do what I can.
As always, as always. And unfortunately, I want to remark on the passing of some very valued Stowe residents this past week. Susan Maxfield, local artist and wife of Bill Maxfield, who has served on our Open Space Committee and who many of us know. Susan passed away this past week. And also Jim Stefanis, longtime owner of Stowe Gardens. I am told he was on the recycling committee at one long time ago. I think I may have even heard him talk about that. But the truth of the matter is that he was the unofficial mayor of Stowe, and a very well-deserved title. Jim was my neighbor for years when I lived on Great Road, and I guess Stowe Gardens was my neighbor. But and I can say about Jim, you know, the best thing you can say about anybody in a small town is that he was a good neighbor. So if we could just observe a moment of silence for both Susan and Jim. Thank you. All right, we do not have any minutes. Maureen is on a well-deserved vacation, and that's why our newest member, Courtney, is taking the minutes. That's because she's our clerk. She stepped up to be the clerk. Thank you, Courtney. Correspondence, does anybody have any comments on anything in correspondence, anything that we want to see on a future agenda? I notice we have a lot of one-day liquor licenses coming up, and we're gonna revisit that policy. I just want my colleagues to know, I didn't want to do it this meeting in part because Maureen wasn't gonna be here, but also I just had a conversation with our insurance adjuster I have a much better understanding of where they are coming from. I've got some information from neighboring towns about how they handle the issues. So I am anticipating that being on our agenda at our next meeting, which I think is June, which is June something, at our next meeting.
11th.
June 11th, which is, I anticipate it being on the agenda then. Anything else anybody wants an agenda item for? Okay. And that brings us fairly quickly, I think, you're welcome, to a report from our state representative, Kate Hogan. Kate, do you want to stay there? Do you want to come up here?
Right.
Okay. Do you know everybody? You know Courtney, you've met
Yes,
Courtney?
and congratulations, Courtney. It's
Thank
great
you.
to see you behind the,
Nice to see
behind
you
the
again.
desk, Tom, always.
Good to see you, okay?
Good to see you, Jim.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Dad.
See you, Representative. Have some pie if you'd like.
I have a muffin. So thank you, everybody. Do you have a full and robust agenda? Tell me how much time.
As much time as you want.
Okay.
I think actually, and I'm sure you hear this everywhere you go, you are the highlight of the evening.
Okay.
So,
No, I don't.
I was being kind.
There was a pause. So
There was a pause.
Should
I
think
thought I
about
would
it.
fill it. So I have a number of things here, but what I can do is set out to tell you what my goal might be. First of all, I wanted to stop by because the chairman and I had been discussing the budget, or at least the House budget. And in that transportation budget, I had been able to receive an earmark for a pilot commuter shuttle program for Stowe, which would mean would be joining Crosstown Connect and the South Acton commuter shuttle that actually goes to Maynard and to the train station. And it seems to me to make a great deal of sense and probably not a whole lot of money to ask that Crosstown Connect would include Stowe in its journey. And so we were able to negotiate a price that would be added to that earmark, which I try to get every year. And we were able to do that, so I'm hoping that that will happen in the budget. We'll know by July, have a confirmation by the end of July that the budget had passed and that funds would be available. And then I would be hoping that the Stowe Selectmen would decide how they wanted to move forward
So-
with the project in the town.
I just have to comment, we very much appreciate that. The timing couldn't be any better, because by coincidence, we're currently talking occasionally at least about issues at the South Acton train station. May I just add, if I understand this correctly,
Mhm.
what it means is that, with the granted pilot money, and I will put this in colloquial terms that I can understand, essentially Crosstown Connect, and we will try it out.
Right.
We will have to come up with a location for parking, obviously work that out with.
And that would be part of Crosstown Connect, the deal with Crosstown Connect, that they would help to secure parking
Okay.
as well.
Okay,
And
oh,
that
okay,
they
that's
would
good to
be
know,
forthcoming with some funds
that's good,
for
Okay.
for parking as well, because it won't work if we don't have a place for people to put cars and not worry about them.
Right.
So
right.
that would be a huge and important thing
And
to
then,
establish.
and then we try this out for a year, maybe two.
Well, it's a year based on,
year.
you know, you would re-up in the next budget.
Okay.
And so forth. We were very, it's been incredibly popular with Maynard, and that they have been using it. I mean, the thing with transportation, especially this kind of last mile transportation, is reliability. That
Yep.
you know it is going to be, be here for today and for tomorrow and for 7 AM the next day and 7 AM the next day after. And that's how you build ridership. And I know that they've done well with it in Maynard, in bringing folks to Acton Station and back. And I don't see why we can't do that with Stowe. You folks are not a part of Crosstown Connect, and we have
Just a sec.
sort of set that aside for this pilot program.
Yeah,
So, that would be something that might get taken up down the road, but there's nothing to say that you would be any more invested than in this particular pilot program to see what you would, how successful it is, what the need is, what the interest is. Hudson, we were able to get a pilot program there in conjunction with Metro West Regional Transit Authority, where they had a bus route, a set bus route in Hudson. We had an earmark for 3 years. It became extremely popular. People used it a lot, and they decided to join the Metro West Regional Transit Authority after that 3-year period, and were able to establish a route that they now use in Hudson.
Right.
And have expanded it, expanded a bit. And what it was the selectmen felt that the town had spoken, that they were using the transportation, they wanted the transportation. You can go before, town meeting if need be, so that things are discussed in whatever level of discussions you might feel needed. But I don't know that there isn't any better way to look at transportation than in these small pilots that we're able to do to help folks get to that last mile.
Sure.
Or to get to appointments, to get to, a set route that, will get folks from point A to point B in a town and connect up to the next point of transportation. And so that's what I tried to do with this particular pilot.
Mr. Hawks has a comment.
Just a quick comment. We serve as liaisons to various boards and connected to our operations, and for my 7 years I've been liaison to the MAGIC subcommittee of the MAPC.
Yep.
The sub-region that we're in was kind of created, the Crosstown Connect, 3-4 years ago, maybe more. And at the time it first came up, they were doing kind of a straw poll at our meetings, monthly meetings. And this question of whether communities wanted to get in at the ground floor of that. And I would just point out to you that there's a little bit of history there, that at that time, given the limited knowledge we had, it would have required participation and use of COA vehicles. And I think there was some kind of difficulty perceived, maybe, as opposed to actual, maybe on the conditions under which the money had been granted to buy the
Don,
purchase of the
you make a
vehicles.
really good point. At that time, when they came to Stowe, basically, we had what we needed. My perception of how it went was that we had what we needed in terms of transportation for our seniors. We had the vans, they had robust program set up in Stowe, and that they really didn't need, their needs were not the same needs that were being met by what Crosstown Connect was trying to do at the time.
Yeah.
And I was I never really felt that if you can't, if your needs and the needs of the town aren't matching up, then it doesn't work for that period of time. But I think with this particular pilot, what we are doing is just investing a certain amount of money and then see where the interest is in the town, what the need is in the town. That last mile has become an important, an important issue for everyone, all my towns. And that to be able to have 2 towns that are being covered by one, by one transportation method is really hopeful for me in terms of being able to, do more and more as we can. These are short dollars compared to what you're talking, when you're talking MBTA, when you're talking about trains, when you're talking about commuter, my gosh, it gets so complicated, it gets so expensive. These are very short dollars that give us some flexibility with commuting and for commuting, and I'm really excited to see if it's something that we can both provide effectively, get parking that will be, in a place that it needs to be for people to feel like they can leave their car for the day, go to working and come back, and that it's $2 ride up, $2 ride back, and it offers people an alternative to either the deadly commute or, other transportation needs that people have.
I think you've got a very good solution, well, potential solution here. I mean, I think everyone has gotten the message over the past several years that Stowe's transportation for seniors, you don't try to fix what ain't broke. But That doesn't mean that there aren't other transportation demand out there. One type of transportation demand that must be out there to some degree is for the last mile, first mile to the train station. We've always had difficulty. Now, we haven't done a survey in probably 8 years. Steve Duncan did the last one. And it was somewhat unreliable. To the extent we got any data, it indicated there wasn't that much demand out there. There's no better way to assess demand than to have a van actually show up someplace in town that's gonna go there. And give it some time, and we'll see how many people take it. So I'm actually very excited about this, especially since we're gonna have continuing conversations about this. The parking situation at South Acton,
Yes, I have a staffer up at the meeting.
yes, but I
What's
have
going
a
on
friend
right
up
now?
there right now. So, it is what it is. And it isn't ever going to get much better. So we need to explore other solutions.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't want my remarks to be misinterpreted.
No,
I'm
but
fully
I don't want-
supportive of this.
No, and understand.
I was
there
disappointed
you
at the
should
time
understand.
that there were some limitations, and I'm very encouraged to see this come forward, and I wish you all the best.
So,
Thank you.
thank you for that. I just wanna, we were, right after this, we were gonna start talking about putting together a working group, confident in your legislative abilities to shepherd this through. It may be a little early for that, but, I'm assuming no harm in at least starting to talk about it.
No, absolutely, and please
Yeah.
do, because I am very confident. You know, rivers rise, but
Right.
if the rivers don't rise, we should be doing well in the budget for Stowe in this regard, so I
think
that
I
was
interrupted.
really why I was coming here, and if anybody, does anyone else have any questions on this amendment?
Tom?
One of the things, you started to answer it, was, it sounded like a $2 charge to each way.
Yes.
Would that be, would the plan be for it to be self-sustaining? I know with a
At
pilot
this
program, you wouldn't
point,
expect it to.
we still, Crosstown Connect has been working on several methods by which it becomes sustainable.
Mhm.
I know that for me to ensure that my shuttle programs stay in place, I do go and get amounts of money every year in the budget, and that helps to sustain the shuttle program itself.
Mhm.
So in terms of its sustainability, the tough part is, how many people you're gonna have on the van? Does that really, does that really become dollars? But as we're looking at programs that are also coming down the pike, as it were, from both the administration and legislatively, I think that these programs already in place are gonna put us in really good position, in terms of transportation dollars going out to communities like ours and regions like ours to increase our capacity to get people into Boston, to get people out to Worcester. And I think that us having, these foundational programs will put us in a good position for grants, further grants, and always talking about how we have a public-private partnership with people where we're taking people, closer to their jobs, we're getting them there. I wish that we were better at that, and I will continue to work on that as we move forward with these transportation pilots and having them become as effective as possible for what they need to do for our constituents and our residents.
Yeah, it's just that, and I definitely appreciate anytime we can get something to, especially to try something like this out, it's great. But, for the long term, I kinda get the feeling that, every dollar we send to Boston, we might get 50 cents back. So it's one of these things that I don't wanna depend on grants. I think that a lot of the programs should be self-sustaining rather than either asking the town to kick in or the state to kick in. If it's something that doesn't have quite enough demand,
It would take, I think it would
Right.
take a while to become self-sustaining, I
Right.
really do. It shouldn't stop us from starting.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
if, I don't know
Right.
if anyone goes to Boston to
Right here.
work, so it's not getting better.
So,
And so I would see it as something that will be a combination of, some funding
Mhm.
from state government, but that there would be some ways that it would be funded to a certain percentage would be anticipated to come. Already we have money in the game, and we have money in transportation in what we're doing, and I think as we move down the road, if we're more willing to put a little bit more money from our towns into into transportation projects, that we will be able to see, funding coming in as well.
So, I don't wanna distract Representative Hogan too much from her overall report. We'll get into this. I think first we wanna see whether there is any demand. You and I may differ on this, because I don't think there's been a transportation project in this whole country since the Transcontinental Railroad that hasn't been subsidized to some extent by government.
Truth.
But I don't wanna see this government subsidize a mode of transportation that people don't want or need. So for me,
Correct.
the first step is, and this is the perfect way to do it, on someone else's dime, frankly, let's see if anybody shows up, and if so, how many. If 100 people a day show up, personally, I'm gonna be open to the idea of throwing some money into it to help them out. But we'll see.
I also
Please
wanted to
do.
pass these out. We sort of did an back of the envelope transportation survey through our email, through our ability, social media, and through the newsletter. We got about 220 respondents, and it was fairly interesting information I wanted to give to folks that talked about what they did, how they got there. Most people are going to Boston and Worcester, but Marlborough and Framingham. What we found from the commission that I was on as well, on that discussed economic development in our region, is a lot of people do head west. A lot of people do go to Worcester to work. So I just thought I would pass these out without too much discussion. Nothing is in stone, but they're still interesting transportation, bits of information from
Thank
folks that cared enough to sit down and finish a survey. So I would pass that out to you as well as we talk about transportation.
Thank you.
And then I thought I would also mention, did anyone else have any questions on the transportation pilot? And as we go along, we'll work closely together, I'm sure. Thank you. So,
There's a question in the audience.
okay.
You wanna
Hi,
say your
I'm
name?
Joanna Miller. I'm wondering whether the $2 there and back would also cover parking, or if there'd be an additional
No.
parking charge?
That would be,
Okay, and then.
my understanding as we sit here this evening, imagining the program, I would imagine it will be $2 each way.
Okay, plus whatever.
It's like
wherever
$1.
the fare- Okay,
I think that's how Minuteman does it.
okay. And then another question is, would there be any availability if you are, coming home midday, or if you are going later in the?
Yeah, and I think those are the important questions that we'll be asking when we're setting it up. I know that both ends of the day are covered. I'm not sure if midday would be covered or not, but it would certainly be something we could bring up
Can I ask
in
you something?
discussions.
Did you come to this meeting primarily on this topic?
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, you might wanna stick around a little bit after Representative Hogan's presentation, because we're gonna stay on this topic.
Okay.
But, I mentioned this to you yesterday during the parade, which is when all important business occurs.
Of course it does.
That ever since we brought this up, emails, people stopping and talking to me about it, there's a lot of interest in this. Unlike so many other things we talk about, this is something that people are actually getting interested in and responding to. I'm hoping that turns into
And
demand.
I think if we start to see ourselves as a region, and we start to see our solutions as regional, and even though this seems very incremental, it really is part, in my mind, of a larger way of reaching out around transportation issues to, streamline it as much as possible. So whatever resources we have, how do we grow the resources we have with the people that know how to deliver the services? And how do we get, how are we able to include more services? So we're even talking about the Boys and Girls Club as part of this, where we had Stowe Stowe students that might wanna go to the Boys and Girls Club. Unfortunately, with rules and regs and transportation rules, we were sort of, not able to meet those needs through Crosstown Connect, but, these are small dollars we're able to solve
Right.
solve problems for people, and transportation is a big problem for people. And to even have the alternative, I'm not gonna ride to work on Mondays and Fridays, I'm gonna take the train, or I'm gonna do it 5 days a week. It gives people options, so I'm pretty excited, and happy that we're able to do this, so.
So let you continue with the rest of what you
Okay.
want to tell us.
And so, what I wanted to also talk about was, very quickly to go over, the local aid and all good things that come from the House budget. We had a Senate budget that's just been finished, but we have not gone to conference committee, where all things are decided and then sent over to our governor, so, I just thought I would go over some of the high points, one of them being the Community Preservation Act. The first time in 20 years, we're going to see an increase in funds to community preservation. And with Stowe being at 20%, being the 3%, it's going to have an impact on us significantly. And so we're pretty excited about
That's terrific.
this. I know that we've been saved because sometimes if we have extra funding, it's gone over to community preservation, but it hasn't the last 2 years. And so finally, at long last, Bob Durand, I'm sure, is a familiar name to people that have been here
Yes.
a while. He and Governor Salucci actually created community preservation many years ago, and came back, and he has been a huge advocate for this and has really helped to get it over the finish line. But as soon as I came to the legislature and having come from the CPA committee here in town, I knew what kind of projects in small towns we're able to succeed at with these monies. And it's really, really something that's set up for our communities. Community preservation funds
Just
are
quick
really
question,
set up.
Jim. Is this the first time the state has kind of made a foray into direct funding as opposed to just registry of deeds?
Well, we've done, no, it is, over time, we've done some, if we've had extra monies at the
Okay,
end of the
one-time
year,
monies.
we've been able to put
Okay.
it back in, so, but this is,
This will be built in.
this will be built in.
Thank you.
And so it should be permanent as much as anything is permanent, and
The
things that are
budgeted
funded.
increase, that's a
Budgeted
first.
increase, it's a first in 20 years, so, and much needed. And for programs that we get done here,
Right.
it is nothing but a good thing, and the bipartisan support that it engenders, I think, gives a good idea of that across the state. Education funding, we're still working on. We passed increases to Chapter 70 by 4.7%. And what we're trying to do is get it right, and should have something by the end of this year, to be able to go into next year with a final bill, as opposed to the bill that didn't get passed last year, unfortunately. Local aid has been 2.7% increase, and aid for councils on aging, about 18 million. And those are sort of the numbers that selectmen and select boards like to see, so I wanted to bring those forward so the folks could take a look. Oh, and of course, Chapter 90, what am I,
Oh, and that's important.
coming
to us.
before a select board, but we were able to pass 200 million in Chapter 90 for this year, and so that should be going out to everyone.
Well, we appreciate that. Chapter 90 money in particular can't come to us fast enough. Questions and comments from members of the board?
Just,
Yep.
if I might display my ignorance, what does PFAS stand for?
PFAS is a chemical or a group of chemicals that have been found in water in neighboring towns. They are forever chemicals. They are, they're considered to be contaminants, and so we found them in Hudson and had to go through quite a process of establishing how we were going to solve the problem in Hudson with PFAS. We had a particular site that actually was a contaminating site, especially for one of the wells there. And so it's going to be an emerging issue across the state as people.
That's not townwide, it's just in the eastern part of Hudson, is that correct?
There are different sites that,
This is a
but
friend,
they're,
I have a neighbor who lives
depending on the levels that you're looking
Yeah.
at.
on
so
the
fairly-
other side of the lake that's getting bottled water
Yeah, yeah.
twice a week now.
Yeah, and so I think that they've sent out letters, Department of Environmental Protection has sent out letters to all communities to, they might want to test their water supplies and see if there are contaminants. The good news is there are solutions, but of course, that comes with a cost, so.
Mr. Burke?
I know from the materials that were thankfully provided by your staff, that PFAS is per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. But to Mr. Hawk's point, and maybe for the point of people at home, can you identify where these high levels of PFAS were detected in Hudson?
Well, in Hudson, it came from testing.
Yes.
They found the levels there, and then there was a two-year inquiry, and it was located on Parmenter Road. There was a company there that was doing the kind of manufacturing that would use PFAS. Now, many of these are not used right now. For instance, the military and sites where the military has headquartered is known to have contamination. Also, firefighting equipment in the day, foam was found to have these particular PFAS chemicals in them. And so there's a whole number of ways that they can enter the soil or the air or the water. And so I put this down as a task force because it's a bill after having worked with Hudson and seeing what they needed to do to move forward in addressing the problem. I put together a bill, an act establishing an interagency PFAS task force so that the state can start to address it, both as a safety and a public health issue. And look at what the contamination is going to be in the Commonwealth, because we've just really begun to do testing. And I think if you are looking at the maps that I did send Brian, you can see that all of the blocks on those maps are simply requested test sites.
So just to anticipate a question that people might be asking at home, and the town administrator can help me out here, I understand from him that our Board of Health has been in touch with the DEP, and right now there's no indication that there's a problem in Stowe, but we remain in communication with them just to make sure. Is that fair to say?
It's a fair statement, and nothing precludes us from taking an analytical, maybe in White Pond, for example, because the map shows the movement, subterranean movement of the contamination and the concentration levels that were found. And it almost looks like it's more to the west or west-southwest movement. And the way Stowe aligns with Hudson along its boundary, it's moving away from Stowe. The closest body of water would be White Pond. And of course, we split White Pond with Hudson.
I would also point out that Parmenter Road and Hudson is very close to parts of Lake Boone as well.
Yeah.
But at this moment,
Mhm.
the Board of Health is doing due diligence and staying in touch with DEP.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Burke?
Parmenter Road, it's a pretty long road through Hudson. Where, if you know, and I appreciate the fact that you did a public water forum in Hudson, where the community was invited.
Yeah, and that's online too, if you wanna just go to my website, there's a lot of information.
Yep.
We tried it, we had a forum on the subject in Hudson, and we also have all the information that we're getting from the town hall in Hudson as they're moving forward with the projects they have underway to deal with the contamination.
And as I said, it was helpful for that to be provided with the board ahead of tonight's meeting. I did look at it, not in any great length, but I'm still a little confused. Is the high levels of PFAS that were, and of course Hudson has a public water supply.
Yes.
Yes.
But were the high levels of testing results for PFAS on Parmenter Road on the Marlboro, closer to Marlboro or closer to Stowe, or can you tell us?
It was probably closer to, it's closer to Marlboro,
Okay.
so.
To be fair, at that point, Hudson's pretty thin. So the distance between Marlboro and Stowe is that far, but I think I know where the
It
business is.
changes to
talking.
Marlboro before you get to the end of Parmenter.
Right.
And part of the task force too, for me, and we'll be working, of course, with people from all sorts of diverse communities, is a private well.
Mhm.
And private wells, in two of my towns are significant portions, as well as public water supply, but it being wells that they're dealing
Yeah.
with.
Well, let's just
So-
say that we're glad you're working on
Yeah.
this.
And I will keep,
And,
folks, Bill and I have already, discussed and, you know,
And-
and he,
And you
Just
alerted
move
us
forward,
about
so-
this, which we appreciate, and we're keeping an eye on it, and we appreciate your work on this and on some of the
yeah,
other
and
things.
so I will keep everybody informed as to what is going on. The task force itself is to make things easier to understand it better, and to be able to take lessons learned, best practices, and the newest sciences, and be able to develop ways that we can deal with this more effectively, so towns sort of don't have to drop everything, and have to figure this out in a way that is both costly and intense. It's very emotional for the town, because when you have cancer-causing agents in your, potentially in your water, it can.
So almost
cause
coming
people-
up with, for lack of a better term, off-the-shelf kind of process that towns will.
Yes. For instance,
that's
if
pretty
you
good.
need different filters for, there
Yeah.
aren't filters that have been licensed that can fit on, especially when you're talking about private wells, you can imagine the numbers and kinds that are there, but there really isn't anything that you can get off the shelf. You can't say go down to Ace Hardware and get a filter that's promised to take, PFAS levels to no
Acceptable.
reading, or, the lowest reading possible. And so, which isn't to say that a water treatment guy couldn't come in, or gal couldn't come in and be able to do that for your house, but you're gonna have to test afterwards and probably continue, since, you have to make sure that your water,
No, and having some sort of
stays
roadmap
free.
available for people would certainly
Yes,
help a
and
lot.
that's exactly what, and also to help with interagencies within government, be working closely together as well, and I think that will be helpful all the way down the road, so. And also, just wanna let folks know that we're able to get some, money in an amendment to sponsor, or the water quality monitoring that they do on the Assabet watershed, and that's helpful.
So-
And I actually invited them to the water forum in Hudson, so.
So
they'll
I was gonna
become
comment
partners.
on that, but then we spent so much time on some other things. So at our town meeting, they basically had to go from town to town begging for money. And this is in place of that, I assume?
No, that must be another project they're working
Oh,
on, I'm
that must-
sure, or more.
That might be the actual remediation.
Yes.
That's probably
Okay.
remediation. This is just telling them
That's
what they need to
chestnut
do.
remediation.
Okay, well, thank you, we appreciate that.
So- Hopefully that is helpful for folks. And then, is there any other questions that anyone has?
Thank you for all your information.
I'm there, you know my number, everybody is welcome to call me at any time.
We know how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, so, thank you, everybody.
Thank you in particular for the transportation pilot project, and we'll keep you informed of that.
And I will keep you
And
informed as soon as we know, so we can all move forward, together, and, these are the kind of projects that people are gonna be looking for. Everybody's talking about transportation, nobody's not talking about transportation. We're actually moving forward, even in these incremental ways. We're telling folks we know how to use small amounts of money to move people effectively, you know, and it's just gonna put us in a really good position as a region to move forward in an area that does not have a great deal of availability of transportation options, so.
Great. Thank you, Kate.
And I have my newsletter, I'll leave that over here,
Okay.
you can grab that at some point. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate, always good to see you.
Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you for all that you do for the town of Stowe.
All right, well,
And please thank Gwen for the muffin. Gwen rocks.
how was it? I can't reach it.
Fabulous.
Was it
muffin.
good? Oh, okay.
For the
Oh,
muffin
muffin you had
Oh, the muffin
yesterday.
yesterday,
Yeah,
the muffin yesterday was terrific.
Pie today.
Yes.
That got us
pie
through the
today.
parade yesterday.
It did. So keeping with the theme, as Kate mentioned, we can reasonably anticipate some money for this pilot project, and we'll need either a working group or a committee to kind of lead the effort on that, interface with Crosstown Connect, talk to whoever the prospective landowners are who might have some parking spaces available. And I just want to devote a few minutes to start to talk about how to approach that. Bill, do you want to make any suggestions? You and I spoke briefly about the possibility of a working group.
Well, I simply offered that if you wanted the approach of a working group as opposed to a formal subcommittee, I've created a number of working groups over time, some to serve selectmen's purposes, some for my own and other departments. So I'd be happy to form a working group to pursue the efforts, and whomever you'd like to have as part of that working group, if you let me know, and or I can add my own. You know, if one of the board members would like to serve, for example, which makes sense.
I nominate Don Hawks to serve on the working group as a representative of the Board of Selectmen. Although my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Town Administrator, when you set up the working groups, you can pick the people?
It can be either way. I can either allow others to offer suggestions.
Doesn't interfere with the inner workings of the process.
No, we could even, I mean, I've put a fair amount of work into this, so there could even be two of us on it.
Fine.
I mean, I kind of like the working group idea just because, number one, that retains all the control in the hands of this board. And, you know, the working group basically gets information, brings it to us, gives us options. And I kind of view this working group as doing a lot of legwork, figuring out what the options are, what the arrangements are with Crosstown Connect, probably talking to prospective landowners if we can't come up with town-owned land that we can have parking on. So it seems, I mean, my initial reaction is that it's kind of made for a working group rather than a committee.
Did you say it needs to be two?
No, I said it could be two,
It could be, I see.
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I second the nomination.
Okay. Why don't we leave it just as both Don and I are interested in participating, because let's face it, we don't even have the money yet. So it's maybe a little.
I'm not sure I'll choose to anyway.
I'm sorry, you're not sure what?
I want you to know that I retain the authority, right?
Well, and-
It's
and
not
that's
really,
the other-
it's
and
not
that's
that
the
if
other
you want a
advantage.
committee,
And that's the
then
other
you
advantage.
should form your own subcommittee, because a working group, technically, the distinction, the difference is that
It's you.
they work for me, I
That's what I
set
thought.
the rules, I will come to you to let you know how our working group is doing.
I would be glad to participate, should you choose to so
As would
honor
I.
me.
As would I. So let's just leave it there, but we tend to like, Linda?
If there's a lot of interest from the public, wouldn't it be better suited that it would be a subcommittee under your control that had a postings with agendas and meeting minutes?
Well, although if all the control over decisions is made, then they can.
No, the decisions are made by the selectmen, you can have it set up so that
Right.
they're reporting to you to make the decision.
Yeah. I don't know. I still see a lot of advantages to the working group. If it is what I see it is, it's just a lot of phone calls and, you know, I got together with this one, this parcel isn't gonna work out, this one isn't willing to cooperate. We got a possibility over here. And then Bill puts it all together and makes a recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, as I pointed out, being representative to Magic, I can go back to them and gather information from the other communities and bring that back to share as well.
The town administrator picks you.
If he picks me.
So let's just leave it there for now.
It can always be revisited in the future.
Yeah.
Right, and I think we just have to hope that Kate is successful in getting the money. I think that is the most important thing.
Well, I'm at your disposal if you want me.
Okay.
Otherwise, feel free to do what you'd like.
Just so long as you don't pick me.
Now that you
So,
brought it up, though.
I thought you had.
now moving on to my draft letter. Phoebe said she had provided a copy
Yes.
Yes.
at everyone's place.
It had gone out. Oh, I'd seen it earlier, so.
And I'm afraid she might not have given me a copy, assuming I bring a copy of my own letter. Oh, no, here it is, got it. So let me update everybody on this, because without a little bit of context, it might not make any sense. So several weeks ago, we had our meeting about the South Acton train station. Otley Thorarenson had identified a change in ownership of a lot at the station that had leased parking. You pay a certain amount a month and you have a perpetual lease that a lot of out-of-town people had, and supposedly the town of Acton was buying it. After that meeting, there was an article in the Beacon Villager. An Acton selectman actually saw it and emailed me, and I got together for coffee with him. His name is David Martin. And he was very helpful. He is a new selectman. He used to be on, what do they call it? The South Acton Train Station Advisory Committee, or SATSAC. He told me that there is a public forum, by coincidence, tonight in Acton. Otley is not here tonight because I asked him to go and attend that. David Martin, the Acton selectman, kind of went through with me some of the various lots around South Acton. There's like 6 or 7 of them, all with different terms of parking. And it became clear from talking to him that one problem here is that we in Stowe don't necessarily know what parking is available and what parking isn't available. And I think one thing we could do to help residents is just give them more resources on that. So I'm gonna pass this out. This is a little map I put together with some professional help of all the lots. And essentially, you'll see the main lot, we all know what the story is there. 60% of it is actually, I thought 60% was non-resident. It says resident here. It's 287 spaces total. There is a free lot that's labeled E here. That's the Railroad Street lot. About 37 spaces. Nobody knows about that. Apparently, you got to get there before 6 o'clock in the morning. I do not think it's restricted to residents. It looks like it's available for non-residents. On the south side of the tracks, there are 2 lots here labeled B and C. B is what's called here Maple Street Lot 1. It's about 30 spaces. It's reserved, meaning there's leased parking, and subject to an annual lottery. Acton has, for reasons that escape me, decided that one solution to this whole thing is to have people go through a lottery to get their spaces every year. David was not personally in favor of that, but it seems to be what the majority has done there. Lot C is the one Otley was talking to us about it. It was and still is privately owned. It's also residential. It's about 40 spaces.
That's the one you have referenced in your letter.
Yes,
Yes,
it's the
thank you.
one,
Richards lot.
it's the one that I think is colloquially called the Richards lot.
Thank you.
And one possible solution is to make that also subject to a lottery. And finally, you'll see over by a baseball field. D, that's Jones Field. There are 2 lots there, a total of 38 spaces roughly, also currently reserved and currently subject to one of these lotteries. So I wanna come back to that because, you know, it's hard to say that a lottery isn't, the lotteries, by the way, are open to non-residents. So it's hard to say they're not fair, unless of course you don't know about. Oh, and by the way, lots F and G over on School Street. G is behind the South Acton Fire Station and abuts conservation land. And F is by this old auto manufacturing or auto service place. Those are both Acton resident parking only. So one thing I wanna come back to is, it's possible that we could put something on our website, maybe this map and maybe some information about this Acton lottery that could help our residents know about the lottery and know what the terms of it are. By coincidence, the time to apply into the lottery is July, and the lottery is actually done in August. So I think it's sort of a timely thing, and maybe we can try to publicize it. I have copies of the 2 lottery applications. So this is all by way of background. Let me set that aside and we can take up my letter. So at our last meeting when we discussed this, we said that I would draft letters to the chair of the Board of Selectmen in Acton, and to the MBTA. I did not draft one to the MBTA just because I wasn't sure what to say, and I thought we'd tackle the Acton one first. And, I mean, we've got it in front of you. For those of you at home, it's a polite letter. The gist of it is, we've heard that this is changing ownership. We hope that they keep in mind the needs of non-residents. I appreciate that Selectman Martin reached out to me. I ask that they consider formalizing some kind of line of communication. I even throw out the idea of having a non-voting Stowe resident on the South Acton Train Station Advisory Committee. See what they say to that. Can I get some comments on the letter from my colleagues? Tom?
I read it, it sounded very professional and very well thought out. I'm fine with it the way it is.
Thank you. Brian, you made a pretty good comment to me yesterday. You want to repeat it for everybody?
Well, it's just that I have learned, because I go to the same church as the building commissioner for Acton, that the Rich's lot was never zoned for rental of parking spaces. So that was always some contentious point that was going to be raised at some point, but it completely fell off the map or fell off the radar screen when Acton just purchased it outright. As to your letter, I was expecting something a little more bellicose, but I'm prepared to allow the chair to adopt a more appeasing tone as he sees fit.
If you'd like to add some bellicose edits, I'm open to those.
I'm free to give, it's your letter, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I like the tone of it, and,
We don't have a lot of leverage here, so I think.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
We have an
That's-
airport, we have a tank.
I'm not sure.
but,
I hope they're not reporting that. It's not the first time it's come up.
No, I made that comment before.
no, Mr. Chairman, seriously, I'm sure Mr. Burke jests out of character about it, but I think we all agree, I certainly agree that it's a well-drafted letter, and it's coming, I mean, look at this focus of our time tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, it's transportation, parking, crosstown connects, there's so many, my daughter had a great expression when she was young, says, "Daddy, it's a big ball of mess."
Yeah.
It's all together. We're talking about the same subjects and different aspects of it, so I think this comes at a very good time to open that kind of dialogue. And, whether we do something as a working group or whatever else, I think it's certainly, we live regionally, the town lines are arbitrary, and, but it's always great to speak about regional solutions to things. It's very difficult to make them happen. Everybody, when you push comes to shove, everybody says, oh yeah, that's fine, oh, wait a minute, this is ours. So maybe we can try to bridge that through some of this mechanism. I would certainly be supportive of that.
Yeah, and I drafted the letter because it was voted that I should. I'm not that hopeful of any tremendous results from it, but in the intervening, whatever it is, 3 weeks, I read this MAPC report. It's about 7 years old, and it's about the South Acton train station. It says, and it's about every aspect of it, but one comment it makes about parking is basically that the parking situation is never gonna be much different than it is right now, because there's only so much land and there's only so many parking lots. And you may be able to change the terms of some here and there, but it isn't gonna change too much. I don't think that means that we don't do anything. In fact, I think it means the opposite. But I think we have to focus our energy on alternatives, like we're starting to focus on with Kate. And also, I really am struck by how complex the rules of parking are at the South Acton train station, and how unless you go to the Town of Acton website on a regular basis, you are not gonna know what they are. So I would really, and I'm glad the town clerk is here, I really wanna put something on our website, especially for the next 2 months when it's lottery time, that tells our residents what they can do to make their situations a little bit better there. So any other comments on my letter?
Just the last one, the addressee of that, Joan Gardner, I have known for 30 years, I guess, and she is also, unless she has relinquished that now being chair, she is my counterpart from Acton to Magic.
Okay,
We are meeting next week, I think,
you can mention it to me.
and I would glad to happen to have a copy of this if it's ready to go.
Okay,
And talk it up and see if I can encourage more interim unit.
I think that's good. It looked to me like she was just elected chair. I looked at her minutes, so it looked like she was just elected chair. Courtney?
I have nothing to add, except that I think your letter is excellent.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, I would like a vote on the letter then.
Just move to authorize the chair to send this letter to the chair of the Acton Board of Selectmen on our behalf, as drafted.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to authorize me to send this letter as drafted to the chair of the Acton Board of Selectmen on behalf of this board. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that's unanimous. Thank you.
Might just add a copy to planning board, because planning board,
Oh,
Magic,
That's a good
they,
idea.
they participate in Magic as well.
That's a good idea. Thank you. And I'll CC the town administrator too, because if anybody's gonna get an angry phone call, it's gonna be him.
Appreciate it. Give my email address as well.
Yeah, and direct dial.
And don't forget my cell phone. Oh, I'm sorry.
We didn't know you had one.
Yeah.
Do you have some kind of other office in another community?
All right, let's stay focused here.
Hey, Jim?
Yes.
While we're still kind of on this,
Yes,
I was just kinda curious, how do people get from
one
here?
conversation at a time, please.
Sorry, I
Please.
apologize to
You know,
the
I'm
chair.
just trying to get a handle on the map here. I'm assuming that the blue line
Oh, I'm
is
sorry,
the
yeah.
train station.
The blue line is the train station.
Right, so you've got the main parking lot, and everybody that's in the A parking lot must walk down to there.
Everybody here walks out of
Yep.
there. This is Route
Extra
27.
copies?
Yep.
Uh,
How do people
They made
get
it
from
one.
B and G and F?
walk. It's really not that far.
No?
No.
There's a cut through.
Well, actually, a lot of people walk up to the tracks and walk down the tracks, which I would never do, but I see people doing it. This is not that far, but it is a hike, but that's of course Acton residents only. I'm pointing at the one behind
There's
them.
sidewalks there.
And there are sidewalks. But yeah, they walk.
I don't believe there's sidewalks between, the
Jones
Jones
Field.
Field and the train station.
No, they
itself.
walk up, I think it's called
People probably
Marcus.
know
If you
that
know
way
that.
too.
Yep. There's, and then you can enter through the official,
Yeah,
crossing.
since the redo of the station, there's now an entrance on the south side, so you can walk up there, it's probably shorter. But I do see people walking down the tracks. So, we may make one small edit, cause I think this is 60% non-resident, at least that's what David said. And maybe we'll put this on the website. And by the way, I have to thank the Conservation Administrator, Kathy Sferra, for her help with this. She saw the caveman-like map that I created, and she wouldn't let me out of the house with it, so she went
Just
and
for
created
reference
this.
purposes, could we have a date on this, if somebody picks up this map at some point
Good idea.
in our archives, let me know.
Can you take a
Mr. Chair.
comment from the audience?
Please, yeah.
One other piece of information about the Acton parking situation is that in the past couple of years, the selectmen in Acton voted to double the price of the parking spots down there from $600 to $1,200 a year.
Ooh.
Just so you know, it's quite expensive.
No, it's now $5 a day.
Yeah.
And they actually, I remember when that happened, it used to be, it was $250 for the longest time. It was interesting, that was one of MAPC's recommendations back in 2012. And the reasoning for it was that the price of parking at neighboring stations in Littleton and West Concord, was $5 or $6.
But these are the ones that are lottery where they take them for a whole year?
So yeah, the lotteries spaces are all $100 a month, which is roughly $5 a day, if you figure 20 working days. Yeah, it's all the same thing. It doesn't make any sense if you work part-time. But, again, in their defense, MAPC recommended that to try to help alleviate the parking situation. They also recommended, and I like this solution, make Littleton Zone 6. And that might get some of us who live in the north half of town to drive up to Littleton, where there's still a parking problem, but it's not as bad.
I was just gonna say Littleton's pretty full too now these days.
Well, things may have changed. I don't think it closes at basically 7:08 like South Acton does, but
And
yeah.
Ingeborg already.
One of the things with something like that, though, was my point when Rep. Hogan was here earlier, is if you're paying, I'll call it, a market rate for something like that, it could possibly drive more parking spaces becoming available because there's funding to do it.
Well, that might be what Mr. Richards did, and then the town of Acton shut him down. And I don't blame them, of course, if it's violating zoning, but then, it's violating zoning, and what do? They turn around, they turn it into a parking lot. So, I don't know, something's wrong there,
Yeah.
but,
Well, that's it, I was looking at this map trying to figure out a piece of property I could buy and start a parking lot.
right. Yeah, that's why I prepared this thing, Tom, so you
Yep.
could make a dime off of it, so.
No,
No, you're right.
I'm happy to hear it's $1,200.
Well,
a
there have
year.
to be people who live along Central Street who are leasing out.
Ingeborg, I miss you already.
Yeah, I'm
So.
about to say something, but I.
What? What do you-
She was
What do you
gonna say,
say?
can we get on with our
Yeah.
business?
Move on already, but I'm sorry, it's not my role anymore.
All right, let's move on. So, we have our annual appointments. Actually, let's, if Ingeborg is here for the update on the lower village, which you don't need to be. I thought I said you didn't need to be here today.
Oh,
'Cause,
I'll see you later.
'cause,
No, I can, if you, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
well, why don't I let Bill give us the update on it, since you're here.
She's closer to it than I am.
Either one of you, since you're here, would you like to update us on what's going on with the working group and the Lower Village project?
Well, sure,
By the way, it's nice to see you.
thank you.
And can you identify yourself for the camera, for folks who don't remember?
Ingeborg
You used to be on this
Hageman-Clark.
board,
She was a selectman up until like 2 weeks ago, so
Yes.
we all know who she is.
and she has agreed to,
I've been appointed to this committee, right? This, the
The,
Lower Village Traffic Committee, or
yes,
whatever it's called.
working group.
Yeah, working group. Well, my understanding, and perhaps I'm incorrect, was that there was a question about how we got to the numbers where we currently are. And I can give you a brief, my understanding is we have a more formal meeting on the 11th of June with you all, where we'll bring in more information, but that this was just sort of a check-in update kind of thing. And if that's what it is, I can sort of talk about, I've
Yeah,
been
I
planning a
mean,
little thing here.
So just before town meeting, Green International reported with kind of a menu of options. And the exact cost of what we're gonna do in Lower Village was uncertain in large extent because nobody knew exactly what options were gonna be picked.
Mhm.
And one function of the working group that you're on is, together with the planning department, to kind of review those options and start coming to some conclusions about what's good and what's not. So just wanted to get an update on how you're doing on that.
Sure, so the committee has met a couple times, I've attended one of those meetings, they've also met with some of their butters, and they've been getting some direct feedback. My understanding of those meetings is that the abutters appear to be happy that their concerns are being addressed, that people are listening to them, and some of them are things like driveways that bottom out when you drive in your driveway and you scrape the bottom of your car, and other things are improper grading or drainage and things like that. So Green and the committee and the planning board and, well, do you wanna know who all is on the committee?
Sure.
Should I say that?
Yeah.
So it's, well, Sue Carter is, Laurie Clark is, Jesse is, Valerie is, and, DPW or Highway Department and Building Department are. So, this report that you're talking about, on May 2nd, Green submitted this report, and they identified, the number that you all had heard for quite a while was about 890. And then they identified some additional additional tasks that need to be looked at. And the thing that I like about the committee so far is that there's a good sort of push-pull on this number, that need, well, what if we did it ourselves, or if we looked at it a different way, that kind of thing. So, very briefly, some of the additional numbers, the numbers have now come up to 1.25. I think you all have heard that, right?
Yeah.
What was it at the public forum?
890.
But that was indicated as a moving target.
No, I understand, I'm just trying to remember.
Well, the Green report, I gave you the report she's referring to, where if you do that math, you come up with the 1.2,
Yes.
because they were optionals that were
Yeah.
offered.
Right, and so some of those optionals, thank you for, that's a good way of segueing into this, there was stormwater management was direct to an infiltration basin adjacent to the
Mhm.
old Papagenos. That basin may need to be enlarged. We may need to look at the soils in that location to accommodate the drainage. That's a big ticket item, but we're looking at that, different alternatives. We're looking at how many catch basins have to be added. Some have to be added. There were some numbers of 9, there are numbers less than that, and that's one of the things the committee is sort of picking apart. Do we need it like this? Can we do it like this? There was also discussion about different types of grading and micro planing on the road to address the the extent of stormwater standing on the road in different storm events. Mass DOT says you can't have it more than 3 feet in or 5 feet in, and in various places on the road it in fact does sit for a while and extends. So there was also some discussion with other people familiar with the road who indicated there may be a different way to grade it, or so that we could perhaps save some money on that. So the point is that the increase from the 890 that you had all heard is part of these different optional things that are being added, that the committee is looking at each one. And I think by the time of June, we should have a better understanding of where everything is. And I think it's actually a very good committee. I think Sue Carter does a very good job on that committee. So overall, I believe the committee is looking at these numbers in a hard way and evaluating alternatives for them, not just saying, okay, let's do it this way.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
There's a fundamental question I have, that I don't expect you to be able to answer, but I would appreciate if you would take back
yep, I intended to do that.
to the committee, and maybe when we get together again on June 11th, we can discuss it. So, let's assume it's 1.2 to 1.3 million for the cost going forward. The cost of the project originally last year, when you add up state money, our money, Chapter 90 money, was roughly, I think, 1.8. A third of the project is supposedly done, the part that ends at the post office. And supposedly there's no need to rip out the drainage that is underground. The solution is gonna be something along the lines of extending the leach field.
Infiltration basin,
Pardon me.
just don't
infiltration
call it
field.
a leach field.
Infiltration basin. But with a number like 1.2, that suggests that practically nothing that was done previously is any good. And I do realize that to some extent, we're talking about redoing like the intersection of White Pond. But I need a better, before June 24th, I need a better understanding of that. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, so part of it is that some things were done that didn't have to be done, some things were done that have to be redone.
And some new things are being
And some new
suggested.
things have to be done, so there's a lot of layers.
The problem is the original bid, as spec'd and responded to by ET&L, was deficient to complete the work that needed to be done. That's my,
But we spent the 1.8 and more. And to say that we have to spend another 1.2 to 1.3 almost says to me that nothing that's out there in the road right now is worth anything. Now, I'm sure that that's wrong.
yeah, I disagree with that.
Okay,
About 600 feet of it, I think that they did the final paving on, right? And that's not being suggested.
That's the third that I think you're talking
There was
about.
Yeah.
a
that's
woeful
completed.
underestimate of the cost of to do the work even as spec'd.
I
Mr.
think
Burke.
your question is fair, though, and I will
I-
try to get some answers to
I
it.
think what Mr. Salvi, our chair, is trying to do is anticipate a
Question at
common
town meeting.
sense question that will be presented at town meeting, and I understand that. I understand, and I thought that, and by the way, thank you very much for continuing. Thank you, it's good to see you again. And if you ever see us rambling on TV, please
I'll
call.
just call. Who should I text?
Me.
Jim?
no, not him, nobody listens to
Brian?
him.
Time to
But
stop.
I really miss you already. But having said that, I think the chair's question isn't meant as, it's not to be taken literally, just seriously. What your working group will have to do is come up with an answer to that. It's partly what the town administrator
There are
said.
straightforward answers, and they will
Yeah,
be
and-
prepared to
and-
answer those.
Yeah, and-
They should be.
That's all I'm saying.
No, I
Well,
think it's an excellent question, because the general sense is, this just keeps growing and growing, and it's become this huge monster, so
Well,
I
Yeah,
understand.
and I appreciate, if it was a stupid question, I appreciate you trying to make it not sound like a stupid question, but no, I meant it literally. But I don't mean it.
I can't help you.
I don't mean it accusatorily.
There's no magic here, there's
None
nothing
taken.
hidden
Yeah.
here.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
I think the question is a good question.
I need a common sense understanding of how the fix costs almost as much as the original project. Bill is getting toward a good answer, but I need to really
And I
understand.
think if you go through, and I know you've read the green report, the original, if you read that carefully, it's gonna be revealing to you as to the nature and extent of the problems and the monetized value of it. So again, there was misdesigned work, some of which got done and has to be reworked. There was the absence of design to get the project done completely, so it never did. So the original cost of that project, if it had been designed correctly, would have been much higher than what was bid.
That's what I was about to say, you're saying it was really a $3 million project all along.
I'm saying it was much higher than what was bid. Because we have to do some corrective work, you'd have to back that out, but yes. The true value of doing that project, in my experience, was much higher than what their deficient plans and specs showed it to be. And what the contractor bid on what was presented to them, and that was deficient.
Okay, that's the
And
start.
I'm not saying that's all of it, but that's part of it, rework, and now some other things that would have improved even on an expansion of what that design was. So the absence of complete design, some bad design, you know.
And they just didn't define the project limits properly, so they left a lot of weird things off the right of way that now have to be graded properly and integrated with the rest of the world. So it's like,
Okay.
you know, and there's a lot of neighborhood.
Just the volume of the asphalt is going to have to be,
And there's a debate
to
on that,
get, to
yes.
get where it should have been, when we're finished, you've got proper grading. It won't be, in my opinion, you know, if we'd have started over, the center line pitch grades and the gutter lines are gonna be better than they are, and they'll meet requirements, but they're not what you would have preferred. But the water will run. So there's so much more product that has material that's gonna have to get them just to raise those pitches that were not in the bid.
Mr. Ryan.
No, basically, I was gonna, you were saying that we had to redo a lot of things and it was costing that much more. I feel the same way Bill did, that, you know, we thought we were getting a $2 million project. It was really a $3 million project. And that's where the extra money's going. That
Okay.
and redoing stuff. So it's,
Okay.
you know, if the project had been done correctly from the beginning, or if the estimate had been done to do it properly, it probably would have been closer to 3 than 2 at this point, but.
Okay, so,
But that should be identified and defined in bullets, you know.
I think that, yeah, I was hoping that this meeting would give us some information that you guys would wanna see on the 11th, so that we could be preparing jointly for the
Getting-
town meeting.
I mean, getting back to Brian's point, it is a question I have right now, but more importantly, I think it's one that's gonna come up at town meeting.
Yep.
That's gonna be the main
Sure.
focus.
So,
And
good, Mr. Burke.
Real quick, do you plan another public forum when you have the final numbers?
I don't know that, I will ask the planning board that question.
God bless you for
I've
hanging in there.
I've heard discussions of it, I think they intended it this time, and there should be. I
Got
think the design's going well.
Of course, the working group couldn't hold a public forum, but I should have said to the
Planning
planning
board.
board.
Planning board,
And God bless you for hanging in there.
But they could, the working group could go in a public
We
forum.
can be
sure.
part of it.
That's not a technical term, public forum, you invite the public, you post it, and you
Right.
advertise, and
I could have a public forum?
you could have, yes, you could, all by yourself.
Might be limited.
Then Brian, and then we all move on.
just one question.
I was wrong, damn it.
I know that we ended up doing a lot of work down there to try to make it better for pedestrians, but a big part of it also was because the existing infrastructure down there was starting to fail. That's,
The pedestrian infrastructure?
no,
Oh,
the
Drainage.
drainage infrastructure was
Okay, yeah.
starting to fail, which was one reason that Mike Clayton, you know, he knew that eventually he was gonna have to be putting that kind of money into the roads anyway, which helped convince him to, you know, support this project. How much, you know, I'm assuming that they replaced the infrastructure and they probably upgraded it some. So is the additional catch basins and everything really necessary? You know, that's what you guys are looking at right now.
Yep.
So and maybe look at some of it from that standpoint, because I don't recall there being any big puddling issues down there prior to, you know, the work being done.
I think there was down by.
Some,
There were.
some of this, and I think there was puddling, and the system was limited and failing.
And it's still.
The standards today you have to meet. So remembering the way, even when it worked well, those standards have been exceeded. You have new standards for moving water, pitch grades, retaining pond, which is undersized, at least as Green sees it. Those are all standards. And the report is replete with areas where they weren't meeting even standards by Mass DOT, which are pretty loose.
Okay.
All right, let's
So,
move
yeah,
on.
there's a lot of subtleties in this, and that's what the working group is trying to figure out is, do we really need this many? Do we need them here? Can we do different kinds? The site is flat. To Bill's point, you have pitch and grade issues, and if you don't have the infiltration better, water's gonna back up. You don't have real much storage capacity. At a 2-year storm, those pipes run full now. So you get a 10-year storm.
That was one of the most frightening
Yeah, but
parts
it's
of
only
that
once every
report.
10 years.
Yeah, right.
That was one of the most frightening
You
parts of that
want
report,
some
that it's built for a 2-year storm.
You know, some of that stuff, you know, unless we ripped out the whole road and redid everything, that wasn't necessarily part of the scope. But we have to, that's all the stuff that the working group is pulling apart into detail. And there is a fair amount of detail in here, enough to make your head spin just a little bit.
Okay.
But we'll try to, I think these are all good questions, because I can bring this back and we can try to answer some of this for our June 11th and for any public forum.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Pie with you?
Oh, no, thank you.
Ingeborg's presence has made me want to move the meeting along. Thank you very much.
And we're grateful for that.
Yes, we are. Come off it.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, a question that the public has asked that I've heard is that hopefully we will see some kind of funding back for the, to pay for this cost, because the failure to have the correct bid or the job or the, you know, I know you're discussing it in executive session, and I'm not asking you to do that, but maybe when we get to town meeting, there'll be some idea of
There
what
will not be.
there will not be.
I
Not
think
even-
suffice it to say, we're gonna pursue to the fullest extent of the law.
Yeah.
Including monetizing and getting things, I mean, there's all of those obvious things that everybody reads about, that's what we're doing. And we're making arguments that we didn't get what we paid for, and costs going forward are gonna be discussed and all the rest of it. So yes, that will be part of it.
Given how long litigation
Could take, right.
there's, no one's gonna have a better answer on June 24th than they had on May 6th.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think the short answer is, it's in the hands of the lawyers.
I thought you were saying the hands of
Lord
the
help
Lord.
us.
Lord.
All right, let's
Yeah.
move on. I want to get to the annual appointments, and I have no idea what time it is because of that clock. Okay.
No, it's-
No, it's
8:22, I got it. So, do I have a motion on the annual appointments? This is a routine matter,
Well, we-
largely plumbing and gas.
Well, we've got.
Go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Chairman,
Specialist.
would you care for a motion?
Yes, well,
Appoint-
let's just take them one at a time. Forest Warden, Building.
Yep.
Yeah.
I move to reappoint Fire Chief Joe Landry to the position of Forest Fire Warden for a 1-year term ending May 31st, 2020.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to reappoint Fire Chief Joe Landry to the position of Forest Warden for a 1-year term ending May 31st, 2020. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Ryan, another motion?
I move to reappoint Craig Martin to the position of Building Commissioner for a 1-year term ending May 31st, 2020.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to reappoint Craig Martin to the position of Building Commissioner for a 1-year term ending May 31st, 2020. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Courtney, you can use the motions to,
Yeah,
yeah,
thank you.
great. And Mr. Ryan?
On the recommendation of the Building Commissioner, Craig Martin, I move to reappoint the following inspectors for 1-year terms ending May 31st, 2020. Assistant Facilities Manager, Local Inspector Douglas Hyde. Electrical Inspector Robert W. Norton. Deputy Electrical Inspector Charles Weeks. Deputy Electrical Inspector Michael A. Norton. Gas Inspector Adam Solberg. Deputy Gas Inspector Robert Smith. Plumbing Inspector Adam Selberg. And Deputy Plumbing Inspector Robert Smith.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve to appoint the persons named to the positions specified. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that takes care of our annual appointments of the inspectors. We'll go to the town administrator's report. For those in the audience, I think we are done with any discussion of the South Acton train station, if that's what you're here for primarily. So, thank you.
But keep the town administrator advised if you're interested in serving on the working group.
Yes, and thanks.
You're welcome to keep that.
Keep it.
I made a few notes on it.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'd take some pie with you.
Thanks for coming out.
Yep.
Mr. Town Administrator.
The first item that I have for you is just an FYI confidentially. I provided John's memo with respect to the matter that was just brought
Yes.
up. So you've got a heads up on the 11th, there'll be that memo that's been discussed. They just gave you a summary on the conclusion of what they informed us of in response to John's demand. I would like to say that the next item on the agenda for this evening is that the Nashoba Regional School District has caused to a rework on their request to borrow what was then $600,000. If you remember, I brought this up back in March, and I believe the superintendent was there that evening on the budget, and then informed you that at that point, they thought it would cost about $600,000 to replace or upgrade the septic system and to replace an underground fuel storage tank. I had recommended to the board that the town not exercise its right under Chapter 7116D for regional school district borrowing process, which says that once notified by the school district of their vote to borrow, they inform the respective towns of same, and then the towns have 60 days within which time to decide whether to take legislative action in their own town, which would be a town meeting in the case of the 3 district towns, on a vote to disapprove for the borrowing. And that's the way it reads in the statute, any one of the towns. So I stated that we shouldn't exercise that right unless there was a compelling reason to do so, and the board didn't feel that there was. The other 2 towns did go to town meeting. Bolton passed it, and Lancaster didn't. Now, with the regional school district, any town, and that's the term it uses, any town that votes to disapprove, and that was the risk that the Minuteman ran when there was the large number of towns and they were borrowing for the school project. Any one of the 16 that voted to disapprove. Now, we did go because I was trying to get that debt excluded, so we did approve it, but it was for debt exclusion purposes. In this case, for some reason, Lancaster disapproved the borrowing, so they have to, if they wish to go forward with borrowing, is to submit after a vote, a second vote, and they had. The prices come down some, they've got some better value, so it's about $480,000 now. But they took that vote, they informed all 3 towns, and the 60-day clock is ticking, and I would make the same advice. There's reason to believe that perhaps all 3 towns will decide to sit tight.
So all 3 towns would have to hold a special town meeting on this new number.
If they wish to disapprove.
Disapprove.
Yep.
I understand, thank you.
And your estimate of the annual debt service impact?
It was minimal,
Yeah.
but it's gonna be embedded in our assessment in any event, because it's their debt, not ours. And it wasn't significant enough for me to be debt excluding, which is my primary reason to say, unlike Minuteman.
My memory is that when it was at the higher number, it was awfully small. It's
It is,
lower now.
Yeah.
And we already have a session of town meeting coming up that we can't add to the warrant on, because it's a continuation of the existing town meeting. I'm certainly reluctant to ask for a special for something this small.
And it needs to be done, so the alternative would be they don't borrow and they just price it up without borrowing would cost us more. To me, there's no practical reason why you wouldn't just allow it to go.
Yeah.
Unless you suspected neither of those projects were necessary, I'll only speak from my own involvement in it, they're under violation of DEP, and they can easily start being fined for it. So we either pay straight up to full cost, or our third of it roughly, or we allow them to borrow, and time value, right, you stretch it out, they save money. The last piece would be is that they've been pretty good to us. For this small an amount, something that has to be done, even for those who may be doubting any aspect of it, like I said, you'll pay more if you don't let them borrow, because it's gotta be done, so.
Mr. Ryan?
Your own interest alone probably would tell you to allow them to borrow.
You know, back a couple months ago, we decided not to exercise our rights for 600 grand. I don't see why we would exercise our rights for 480 now.
I agree, especially for an underground fuel storage tank,
That is
And-
under,
DP sanction.
yes.
I don't understand, so,
I'm not sure what took place in Lancaster, to tell you the truth.
any
Knee-jerk.
further discussion?
No, I'm prepared to accept, once again, the town administrator's recommendation. In addition, even if we thought it would be successful in defeating this project, and we wanted to defeat this project, the cost of holding a special town meeting for just this one item would probably be almost as much as the first year's payment.
Good point.
Just a matter of parliamentary procedure, we could conceivably do a special within the annual.
Yeah, but you would have had it posted it.
Yeah, we didn't,
Right.
We can have it on the same night, but you,
Never mind,
we didn't post it, yeah.
that's academic.
Rather than
Yeah, we're
academic exercise.
now less than 30 days,
Oh my God.
so, okay, thank you, Bill.
All right, so two other quick
Do you
things.
need, you don't need a vote on that for the record? We just,
No,
by
if
non-action
you,
is,
if you want to,
we'd have to do it
non-action
the
by
other way.
itself defines it.
Okay, thank you.
It confirms the town's IT consultant, which is Retrofit Technologies, we've had probably, 3 or 4 years, as long as Ron's been here, because when our IT department blew up, whatever number of years ago, he came in, I was convinced we had another consulting firm, and part of the reason we had a problem was that the consulting firm we had wasn't, we weren't getting our money's worth. Retrofit, we went out, I worked with Ron, he had experience with him, I checked other sources, very good firm, been doing this a long time, they're good at it. And I think what you'll find on what I gave you for their, it's almost a qualification brochure, but it's the assessment that they do freely for their clients, of which are many, but the state's IT division is co-signing on this. And
Oh.
they're well experienced if you look at the heading there, it's
Yeah, I was
it's
trying
not
to,
obvious.
no, I was trying to understand why they were on this too, but thank you for explaining that.
So they do a lot of work. In any event, growing concern, as there should be, for cybersecurity. We all read every day of some municipalities, some hospitals, some private sector or public sector entity gets ransomware or something else. And so they provide what I gave you, and it provides an outline of the nature and extent of the services. It's a full assessment. They try to crash into their own system because they provide it to us to see if our employees, this is more about getting the employees to do or not do certain things that expose us. Like changing your password frequently, and really going less to single digit or letters, which are scientifically more easily hacked than taking word phrases, for example, that you create of your own. And those manner of things, but decided to ask Ron to ask them to provide the service they do. We're queued up, get a time, there'll be full training for all of our employees. An assessment taken from that, written reports that will come to us, I'll provide to you. And so I just want to let you know that we're in the process of getting that done.
So I think when there's a written report, maybe we'll make that an agenda item and we'll have Ron come in and.
Whatever you'd like to do, yeah.
Oh, but we're staying on top of this. I was watching the news, I mean, it's more and more cities.
And Baltimore just got hit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's anyway, you're
Still
right.
must be next.
Still must be next, I know. The last piece I want to let you know is I just executed a contract with the Ed Collins Center for Public Management out of UMass Boston for that employee staffing and compensation study. So the representatives from the institute will come out, we'll chat, get rough in some framework, but I'll probably create a small working group for this, just so the employees are directly involved in it from start to finish, so they can get some ownership in it.
That's a good idea.
And we'll get going, and I hope to have the results in time for the budget season next year. So,
All right, questions for the town administrator?
Do we have, is this just one person from the
by the way,
Town Center?
one of the persons knows you.
Mr. Kobayashi, is he still there?
No, but a Mary,
Wasn't that from the usual suspects?
Mary someone, I'll remember her name, but she mentioned your name from way back when, whatever,
Oh,
she's
yeah.
been doing this for a long
Yeah,
time.
she was in Belmont, I think.
Oh, maybe.
In the Pleistocene era.
She knew,
Yeah.
first thing she said to me, she doesn't know me, she said, "Oh, do you know Mr. Hawks?"
Oh,
Oh, the esteemed Mr. Hawks.
from Lake Boone. Maybe we should,
Never mind. Never mind.
maybe we should rethink this.
I'm not taking her opinion on anything.
Well, she's one of a team now, so you
Yeah.
know.
So, all right, we can, I think, let the town administrator head out
Take some
to town of Orange. On the Orange website, and I noticed they have nice pictures of their selectmen on the website.
Oh, are you
we-
making a
who's are
motion
you
to put
looking
in a
at?
future action
What do you
item?
think?
Huh?
You let them know
The pictures
about
of
it,
all
sure.
the selectmen?
That's what it says. It's,
What?
do you have
Pictures of your selectmen?
rotating pictures of the selectmen?
I don't know why there's such a
You guys can
preoccupation
do
with this.
that.
I mean,
Because you let them know it bothers you.
I'm trying to find out what night your meetings are.
They're on Wednesdays, every other Wednesday.
Every other Wednesday?
In fact, tomorrow and Thursday, we're interviewing finalists for a new police chief.
Oh,
I know who you mean, I can't think of her last name.
Mary Accardi or something?
Accardi, yes,
Okay.
yes, she was in Watertown, I think, as a personnel director.
Was she?
Let me know when she's gonna be around, I can say hello to
Be
her.
happy to.
Bill recently became a selectman in the town of Orange.
The town of Orange is lucky to have your expertise.
Our condolences.
There's a Bill. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
All right,
Take some
good
pie.
night.
All right, all we have left are liaison reports. Why don't we start with Brian?
I've gone to meetings, there's nothing much, I mean, all I'm doing right now is liaisoning with Gwen's Baking.
We can see that, and we appreciate it. Well, okay, thank you. Mr. Hawks?
Nothing.
Me, a lot of this South Acton train station stuff and the liquor liability thing that you'll be hearing about next time. Tom?
Town hall building, we're getting back to doing things. Hopefully, we had a meeting last week, we'll hopefully be having another one either tomorrow or Thursday. We're looking to get some work done eventually. We're on our 21st meeting.
Okay. And Courtney, I'm kind of assuming you don't have to have too much by way of liaison reports.
Nothing yet.
Yeah, so we actually, I will ask that we start talking about liaison stuff at our next meeting. Usually what happens is we get the list. Did you get the list of liaison
I
assignments?
believe I did.
Yeah.
Okay, so look at the stuff, obviously the stuff Ingeborg had is up for grabs, and then they can be horse trading.
Great.
Okay, and we'll start that process at our next meeting. Do I have a motion?
To adjourn.
Adjourn,
Second.
non-debatable,
Non-debatable.
but you gotta vote on it.
All in favor,
Aye.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take some pie with you.
Hardly a second.
Linda,
Yes, what kind of pie?
we have strawberry rhubarb and
Oh.
apple pie with cheddar cheese crust.
Oh,
What? Strawberry?
do you know that cheddar cheese, we're the Massachusetts, New England are the only ones that will eat cheddar cheese with apple pie. Most of the country doesn't even know about it.
Oh.